Welcome to Heart Conversations. My name is Abhijit Joshi. During this unprecedented time of pandemic, I personally felt a loss of deep human connection. Sitting with that feeling, I thought what I could do about it. From that, I got the idea about heart to heart conversations for bringing people together. It gives us a platform where we get to know the stories of the amazing people around us. We get to know what shaped them into who they are today. It is our goal to foster deep connection and inspiration by presenting stories never told before. Hope you enjoy it.
Hi, Alyson. How are you?
Hi, Tasha.
It's so great that we have this technology that we can still connect. I know you and I have
Yeah,
been talking and connecting over what, at least over a year since I first met you. We've always had candid conversation.
that's true. With me, Tasha, you have disarmed me. I've always felt like I could just tell you what's on my mind. You just have that kind of openness.
I really appreciate our conversations when we had in the club as well as outside of the club. I really want to talk to you about how you grew up. You didn't start here in California.
Most folks who know me know that I'm from New Orleans. I'm proud of being from New Orleans. It's one of the places in the country that has extremes of reality. It's extremely amazing and magical, and it's extremely evil and with a weird underbelly. And that makes for a very interesting experience growing up there. It was mostly white. I went to an all-white elementary school, and it was in the time in the 60s when I was about 9 or 10 that everything was changing, including in New Orleans. Civil rights was just starting to become something I was noticing. Around all of that, there was also Mardi Gras and amazing food. And my mother learned to cook from her mother, all the classics, gumbo, red beans and rice. So it's an interesting place to come from.
I knew there were some important people in your life that shaped your views today. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
One of the major ones was Aline Spotson, the lady who came twice a week. In those days, we referred to them as a colored person. She's an African American Black woman who came twice a week to help my mother in the house and watch us kids. She certainly loved us like a substitute mom would. And in fact, because my parents, they had a lot of conflict in their marriage, and Aline saw how hard it was between my parents and how hard it was for us being around this conflict zone all the time between them. And so she was just so calming. She would say, "Come on, be my pal. Help me make some lemonade. Help me make some cookies. Come on, let's do this or that together." So she went well beyond what you would imagine any person who is coming twice a week to help with the ironing would do.
Seems like she had a lot of impact on your life, and I kind of can see that from you, Alyson, how you have that calming effect.
I'm grateful. She was an amazing lady and a huge influence on me. You wouldn't think, somebody doing the household chores would be an influence, but she was one of the major influences in my life because of the kind of loving person she was. And she was so loving, even though my parents, my mom appreciated her, but they didn't treat her like a social equal. It's not a thing I am proud of, unlike being from New Orleans, but my great, great, great grandparents were plantation owners. They owned slaves that worked a sugar plantation. And many people in New Orleans have that type of background in their heritage. New Orleans was a huge, major slave trade center of North America, and the major area where cotton and sugarcane and other major crops were grown right around New Orleans, and all the open fields. Rice was also grown there. the culture coming down from those generations certainly did come down right into my very own home. And so the culture I grew up in and around, from my family to my neighbors to the community to the Catholic Church to the schools, I was in a bubble of whiteness, and the kind of understood attitude there was, we deserve to be in charge of things. We always have been. And, you know, there's a class of people, Black people, people of color, who deserve to be, you know, overseen by us. I mean, maybe not literally, but there are certainly attitudes like that. And in fact, we had a portrait of one of the slaves that lived on the plantation in our breakfast room that oversaw all our meals in that room. And nobody gave it a second thought until I had been away from home for quite a while. It's definitely not a challenged set of assumptions in a lot of places in New Orleans. I'd say especially in the older white families who have that heritage. They're just starting to take a look at the ripple effect of all that. In fact, I went to school at the same time. I was in the same grade as Ruby Bridges, who was the first Black child to go to a public school, who had the 4 federal agents escorting her into the school. Norman Rockwell did a painting of her. There are plenty of newsreels and pictures of white mobs holding up racist posters, yelling and screaming and throwing things at that little girl. That was just 3 miles away from me walking into my all-white school. And so it's not an easy thing to look at and to say, wow, my family was part of all that. You know, my relatives could have been throwing the tomatoes. It's horrifying and heartbreaking. And I accept that that's where we are and have been. And I'm making a conscious decision to be different myself. And if I have opportunity to talk to my family, you know, with my siblings, I have. And we've had a lot of discussions about it. With other people who I would just be pushing away, I'm as diplomatic as possible. But with strangers and people like you guys in Toastmasters, I have nothing to lose to make these speeches. And one of them was exactly about that, about Ruby Bridges, about Alyson. One of my speeches was Why Take a Knee, about Colin Kaepernick. And I'm happy to make these speeches. And in one of my clubs, a few people came up to me. They had the conservative view. They agreed with my relatives. You know, I was glad to talk to those people and get them to think again. And that's what I feel helps me heal from that dark side of my family's history.
How's it going back? How do you handle those type of discussions?
Yeah, good question. It's a very fine line to walk with my family. Inside my immediate family with my siblings, you know, we all have kind of taken our little square of where we stand, but we've all agreed to continue to be in each other's lives and love each other. With 3 of my siblings, we all are wanting to understand how we can be more helpful and aware. But one of them is staunchly in the camp of, we've done enough, it's in the past, and what are they complaining about? And so we don't try too much to influence her because she is really not changeable at this point. We've always been a family that feels close-knit and love each other. And it's difficult for me to navigate that. You know, I don't want to be a coward. And I did ask at a family reunion the last time I was there if anybody else had mixed feelings about our heritage of having had a plantation with slaves. I didn't try to come across as judgmental or recommending anything. I was just curious to take the temperature. But even just asking that question in that setting has put me under a suspicious light with those. I think they're more careful around me now. So I think it's an evolution I think the younger generation of my family is much more open to looking at things differently. And the older generation is harder to reach from that standpoint. But I have decided that I'm not going to cut anyone out of my life because of how they view things, which it's a heartbreak because I wish everyone could be open to looking at all sides of the issues and not defensive about things. We all have strengths and weaknesses, darks and lights in our personalities and our histories. And to push away the things that might not be easy to look at is just going to continue everybody being in the dark, blind to the problems. You know, I read a lot of progressive online news, and a lot of the comment sections, everybody's just taking opposite sides. You know, they're calling each other names. I understand the motivation for that, but it doesn't help to make somebody into the villain, even if you disagree 100% with their attitude or their point of view. It just entrenches them more. So I think the better approach is not to villainize, but to educate and to listen.
And
It gives people an opportunity to hear themselves out loud, right?
yeah,
At my family reunion, when I asked the question, hey, am I the only one that has some mixed feelings about our relatives owning slaves? Everyone went at the table, went around the room, and they all got to hear themselves. So I think they might have gone home and replayed what they said and heard. And as I was leaving, my cousin came up to me and said, you know, Alyson, I never really thought about our family that way. So she didn't really have a lot to say during the dinner, but maybe having people hear themselves will start moving things.
How long has it been since you've been back to New Orleans?
I was going to go back this past April for the French Quarter Music Festival. It is a festival of love and music and food, and we had to skip it because of COVID. So as soon as I can, I'm going to get back there.
So you'll hopefully have another round of table topics where people...
That's a great way to put it. It was literally a dinner table topic.
Yeah, give people food for thought. Yeah. Why now in talking about your family's past and how you grew up?
I think that the world is suffering right now from a huge lack of love and ability to empathize. Politicians are trying to break us up into separate camps. When our country was founded, we broke up the camps into the entitled and the wealthy versus the serving class, the slave class, the people who were below. And then that's stayed a wedge. For me, talking about our past, getting people to look at history in a different light, and especially being able to say, hey, my family was part of that history. I'm personally responsible in a way. And the place I come from is still unraveling the threads of all of that history. Let me give you my perspective. Why do we have to continue to see each other as us versus them, better or less than? And if I can convey that message through my personal experience in history, I want to do that. I feel that's the least I can do.
The more that there are people like yourself talking about race relationships and injustice in the world, helps to be able to say what I have to say. I think that's very important, and it's very encouraging. And it's great that we have this platform that we can talk courageously and develop over time to find our voice and share our background and views. I think that is how we connect with people. You sharing your background and you opening up has really been in sort of a way of therapy to me. To know that people are, like you said, making a conscious decision to make a difference and to impact others. What I'm so encouraged by are the conversations that are happening, whether it's at work, in Toastmasters, or some of the organizations that I belong to. Really, there are conversations through Zoom meetings, through panel discussions, through sharing of ideas, and people actually coming with actionable items on how they could move the needle forward. We're not just discussing things, we're changing policies and practices. We are educating ourselves. I think everyone should be educating themselves and having these candid conversations. You know, what do I not feel comfortable talking about? Why do I feel uncomfortable talking about? It's going to take generations. This is not something that's going to be able to happen in one season. So I think I see more people invested with time and money. So it's really encouraging.
I remember calling you a day or so after George Floyd was killed, Tasha, and I was really concerned with how you were feeling. So I called you up and I just said, how are you doing? And in that call, you told me a little bit about all the emotions swirling around inside you.
I couldn't even look at the video because I knew how angry I would feel and how helpless I would feel. And the reason why I say helpless is because, you know, I have two sons. They're aged 25 and 27. They're doing great out in the world. One is getting his PhD in psychology. The other one is getting his degree in business. And they're community leaders. And I know that that doesn't even matter, that they could end up the same way George Floyd ended up murdered. I couldn't even bring myself at first to even look at the video and think about it, dwell about it. I had to move on because it's happened so many times. This is a way of life. And
Tasha, can you say more about it's a way of life for you? What does that mean? Help us understand.
It's been happening since I've noticed it since I was growing up. And the fact is that it's now being recorded more and more. I knew that this cops killing Blacks. It's not anything different. You just go, oh, okay. You know.
So it must seem really crazy that a lot of people, the majority of the country has in the past kept saying, oh, it's just a few bad apples.
Sorry, it's just hitting me more than I thought it would hit. The question's hitting me more than I thought it would. It's not about bad apples and good apples. I take it personally because of my sons. And it's one of the things that I've had to do, you know, every Black mom that I know has had to do, was teach your sons what to do when a cop arrives. I mean, as early as 9 and 13 years old, we have drills. Okay, you're stopped by a cop. What do? You know, hands up, make sure your hands are always visible. I mean, in school, we had earthquake drills, or we had nuclear war drills. The same type of drills my young sons, we've had to have over what happens when a police stops you. You're always fearful for that one day that it might happen.
Oh, Tasha, that is heart-wrenching.
You can understand that sometimes you just don't want to think about it. You don't want to think about the worst that could happen.
For the general population to finally have an inkling of what you and other mothers have had to do, it's way past high time for us to understand this. I was horrified but not surprised, Tasha. I hate that there have been so many martyrs, but I'm very grateful that at least this public, that it was recorded, made it so much more visible and hard to ignore or hard to sweep under the rug. I wish we had been able to, as a country, look at how things are done here towards Black people, people of color, minorities, and not see it as a one-off. Why did it have to take this long? Why did it have to be this? But thank goodness people are finally starting to wake up more.
Because it was televised, because it was recorded, and we're all sheltered in place, everyone had to kind of look at this, and that's when things started to turn and people were out in protesting and in droves I've never seen before since the civil rights movement. I've never seen such a collective outpouring of outrage, and at the same time, support and love for the Black community is amazing. I didn't even think we would get or address the issue of systemic racism when it comes to law enforcement. And so it was, it's just been a roller coaster of, you know, what does this actually mean? Are we moving the needle? What can I do to keep this momentum and be a part of this historic moment? The moment that people started protesting, and not only here in this country, throughout the world, that is what really affected me. That's when it really hit me. I really took notice and attention and said, wow, things, it was for the first time I think I felt things could change. There's a pang that a mother feels every single time something like this happens. Sometimes I don't want to deal with it because the pain is so deep. Every time something happens, you can constantly just be sucked into a world of despair. So when it actually happened, I had that pain and that angst, but okay, that happened. What can I do about it? You know, you feel very powerless. But I realized that as other people are acknowledging this and our country is acknowledging this, we can together, that's the only way that this is going to change. And that's when I had hope, when I saw everybody protesting. New Zealand, Germany, Switzerland, all over the world, that gave me actually a source of joy. So I know this man has been murdered, but it was something, I think his daughter recently said, my dad changed the world. Out of this tragedy, at least there is tremendous good that can come out of this. So it just made me deal with things that I've not dealt with things in a while. I'm still unpacking it. And that's kind of why we're, you know, I'm glad to have this conversation with you, Alyson. I think getting your perspective, I don't think people put each other in other people's shoes. And I'm grateful to that. Thank you, Alyson.
Well, you are a real gift of a friend to me, Tasha. I don't want to characterize my feelings as feeling guilt for the past, although I do think the whole country needs to look at our past together. You give me a sense of healing to be able to have a relationship with you and say that I'm sorry for whatever my part my family played in, even though our relatives may have never crossed paths. to me, it's healing to have a good friendship with somebody who has the other side of the fence experience, and to support you any way I can. It's like I feel it's a little something I can do.
Alyson, I love you. And I am so sorry I can't give you a hug.
Hey, me too. I would take it and give you one right back. You know, I love you too, Tasha.
It's just been an amazing journey with you, and I'm just looking forward to continue on that journey with you in my life. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tasha. I'm glad to have you by my side.